Previously on Spies Like Us.
Welcome back to Spies Like Us. This is part 2 of our episode about the actual film Spies Like Us from 1985. And if you listen to the prior episode, you already know that we broke format for this one.
Yeah, we did the episode with Yammering Lou and just talked about the movie in general. And then in this episode, just you and me, we're going to just purely drill down into the tradecraft of the Spies Like Us movie. And, we both agree there's not all that much to drill into here.
No, not really.
But whatever nuggets we can find, you can count on us to completely overanalyze in this episode of Spies Like Us. So first off, GLG20, that's made up. There's no such thing.
Of course. I'm sure there's some weird acronym that Aykroyd has for it, though.
Oh, that's possible. Some other like TV series, very minor TV series, like used it as a name of a spy gadget or something. So, somebody thought this movie was interesting enough to reference. that someone was not me.
Yeah, or me.
All right, questions. Why would it matter if there was a leak in the training program?
Well, because then you could. Once they get out, it's kind of like why most intelligence agencies recruit out of college. You have some young, new, fresh, ambitious type getting excited into the new world of whatever they're jumping into, and it's a concern. Because it's not it's not what they learned in training. It's the fact that they can start them early.
Sure. Now, I think, aren't we supposed to, isn't this another one of those cases like Our Man Flint where they say, like, we just lost, like, some of our best guys?
Well, that's exactly what they said. They're like, oh, we got our two best guys on it. Well, our last two guys were the best two guys.
Right. And, so did those guys just go right through training? Like, like the leak part, it's just, it makes no sense. Minus 5
I see
points.
what you're saying. Yeah, because that training was, like, super quick. I mean, they did kind of mention that they like raced them through training. So I don't know. But if presumably if you're at that level of intelligence and you run through that training, you've already been through some kind of training, unlike our two decoys here.
It's not like they make a big deal out of it. I mean, they appear concerned in this early scene. And this is like supposedly the point of why they're going to run, because there's a leak in the training program, which doesn't make sense on its face. Then now that's going to make you say, okay, so we'll run some more guys through the training program, but these will be fake guys.
Well, it seemed like a race plot point, kind of like what we discussed with the Yammering Lou, that a lot of this movie was just kind of written overnight, probably.
You should have people already trained for the job. So, and then also, like, they say they're going to assign them to the Foreign Office, which the Foreign Office doesn't do this kind of thing at all. That of the kind of mission that we're seeing.
Oh, right. Like there might be spies in the Foreign Office, but they're not going to be parachute dropped in a giant box in the middle of Pakistan. Yeah, no.
Right. That's not the kind of spying that they do. We could say right now, I mean, there's so little spying in this movie, crossing without permission into hostile enemy territory to, grab one of their nuclear warheads, ICBMs or whatever. I mean, that counts as spying, right?
Yeah, but this would probably be more military intelligence than it would be, or at least they would have sent someone to oversee military intelligence. Like, this isn't something you would send these two guys into.
I could see using the CIA.
Right, but you wouldn't send the CIA. Well, you would send like someone to oversee that. Is what probably. I'm with you. It's a little far fetched as to why you would send those two guys that have been, pretty much desk clerks that in the intelligence agency on this type of mission. You would have gotten somebody that has a ton of field experience that you don't have to worry about like stepping on a mine somewhere. But you might have like an intelligence officer, like a CEO, or at least like a team of analysts, like at base camp somewhere. But the two guys you sent into, I don't think you would send like a CIA unless that guy had like years of experience and he was still young enough to like run across a desert and ride a camel
So just all this stuff, all this setup stuff, it all combines to be my number 2 worst trade craft. Just that the setup, it's sloppy, it doesn't make sense, it references agencies. Even if this was for some reason a good idea, like this is not how you do it, and they're referencing like the wrong agencies for this particular job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then minus points. I don't know if you even want to call them spy points, but minus points for all the training.
Absolutely. The training had really no help. I did get a laugh out of the plane falling. That was pretty funny. But other than that, I think that was more of a relief laugh. That's what we kind of agreed on.
I think that's exactly how I feel about it. I feel like I was waiting to laugh like so long that plane just dropping out of nowhere. It just, I don't know. It just triggered, this well of wanting to laugh at something, and then just, I don't know, just seeing someone get kicked in the balls. If it's not funny, but if you're really, really wanting to laugh at something and you've been waiting a long time, like you get a laugh out of a ball kick.
Even like the G-force training, I'm not sure what that was for, unless like the parachute drop didn't work.
Right, and it's like Lewis said, like, and you're saying as well, like everything they do in training, like none of it pertains to what they actually need to do.
No.
And even what they need to do is really just their instructions are just to basically, go here and find your contacts. Oh, you didn't find your contacts? Then go here and find your contacts.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
You didn't find your contacts there? Whatever,
Yeah.
just kind of go wander around and be funny.
Right.
Which is mission failed.
I mean, to be fair-ish, or like at least stretch for them,
sure,
they were planned decoys, right? And the training they went through meant nothing, so anybody spying on them would think this training was relevant, and so I guess it's a good decoy play. But I mean, that's a stretch to begin with. I mean, there's not going to be a bog in the middle of Pakistan. Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, good point. That's one of the ones I was thinking of.
Yeah. But I don't know if we're going to talk about this yet, but I'm going to put my number 1 tradecraft was setting up the decoys. It was really hard for me to find good tradecraft in this, and I'm going to just say the idea of planning decoys to try and get the other 2 spies in, I think was cool-ish. I guess it was a good play. I don't know, but that was the best I could find. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
The man who knew too little was kind of a struggle to find any decent tradecraft to thumbs up.
And there was a lot more to pick from.
I think there was, because even though like it was again like a bump, there's a similarity here. This guy is just like bumbling his way through a spy movie. These guys are kind of bumbling their way through a spy movie, but he, like the Bill Murray character, actually felt like he was bumbling through a spy movie of spies doing spy stuff, and this kind of just isn't even that. Like, it's not so much that like a struggle to find the good tradecraft in here. It's kind of like difficult to find anything to call tradecraft at all.
Yeah, to begin with, yeah.
Yeah. I do have an interesting thing to chew in on. This is gonna be one of my trademark, like just like find like this one tiny thing in the movie and just really look up and research everything about it. But the line of Aykroyd's character, when his boss is sweating him over, like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And and Aykroyd says the line. He says, the Chinese were only using a simple polyphonetically grouped 20 square digit key transposed in boustrophedonic form with multiple nulls. Which, me being me, I gotta know, like, is that word salad or are these actual terms you would use in encryption? You want to hear what I got?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, good. Let's start with polyphonetic. Polyphonetic doesn't mean really anything in this context because Chinese is a polyphonetic language. All Chinese is polyphonetic. Polyphonetic means, you know, that thing like you like, I think the first thing any non-Chinese person learns about the Chinese language is, you know, you'll hear like, you know, like in grade school or something, someone will tell you like, oh yeah, you got to be careful in Chinese because, you know, if you say the word for cow or the word for mom like the wrong way, like it's the word for cow.
Oh, like inflective.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
so that's like the technical term for inflect, because I know Chinese is very, very inflective.
Right.
Not as much as the Southeast Asians, but yeah. Okay, so that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the hell that meant. I was like, what? Okay.
So it's a great sounding word, but doesn't actually mean anything. I can only speculate what 20 square digits might mean. I don't know. I might want to just skip over that one. I couldn't actually find any reference to that. It could have something to do with using square numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's like they use the first 20 square numbers, like 1, 3, 7, or 9, whatever.
Well, he probably meant the algorithm, because I know, but algorithms are generally based on prime numbers. But that's probably what he meant. I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine it's got something to do with prime numbers. But I couldn't find an actual reference in any like cryptography stuff that actually talks about, like, specifically the term 20 square digit key. You know, I couldn't figure out what that means. Moving on though, like, I like this word. This is a great word, boosterphedonic.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so transposed in boosterphedonic form. Boosterphedonic is a method of writing that was used by some of the ancient Greeks. Like, and when I say ancient, I mean like Bronze Age, like carving shit on stone tablets,
kind
of shit. And it means when, okay, you know, like usually you write a line, like you start writing from left to right, and you proceed to the right. And when you get it to the end of the line, we drop over back to the next line over on the left side and keep writing again in the same direction. Boosterphedonic is more like a snake form. You write the first line left to right, and then you drop down, and the next line is written right to left, and then drop down and...
Oh, so kind of like a snake?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's interesting, and I could see how that could possibly be used, like, to make something harder, like text, more difficult to decrypt, because you know, encryption, you're using computers usually, and they're like looking for like patterns, and if you do this, those patterns are going to be harder to isolate. But you know, like if I gave you the unencrypted version of the message, you could easily just look at it and instantly see what's going on. You know, and you'd be like, oh, I just need to read it this way.
Right.
But it would be hard. It would make it harder for a computer to crack. Problem with that though is that they're talking about like an audio transmission in this scene, and not text.
Oh, well, that doesn't work.
Right. And I can tell that it's an audio transmission because the guy described it as static filled. And there's not really such a thing as static filled text, right?
Right.
So there's that. So and like you can't speak, like, you can't speak in boosterphedonic. Like, where how would you know where there's no end of the line in speech. There's no logical place to drop down, and even if you did somehow train people to speak, I mean, it's impossible. How would you even do that? Like speak 6 words forward, and then the next 6 words I'm going to speak
backwards, or in reverse, speak like Yoda or something.
Worse than that. I would have to actually like say each word, like almost like like when you play a record backwards.
It
would be like that. It would be like hearing the record go forward for a while, and then for a while, it's like the record's going backwards. So yeah, nonsensical. But I was interested to find out what booster photonic meant. Finally, he says that there's multiple nulls. Now, null ciphers are also useful in making a message harder to crack. A null cipher is, let's see. Oh, a null cipher, like a really good example of a null cipher is if like I wrote you a little letter and I sent it to you, but you know that you're only supposed to read the first letter of each word, and that will spell out the actual message that I'm sending you.
Oh, okay. You learned those like in elementary school.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And there's a bunch of cases of that being used. And that's, again, something like null ciphers are incredibly easy to decode.
Right.
But if they're layered in with other encryption methods, it can make it harder for a computer to decrypt it in the first place.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Well, at least we got something out of this.
Right. But again, you wouldn't, let's see. Yeah. So if for instance we set aside the static thing and imagine that they were that it was a text message that they were decoding, booster photonic would be cool, but you wouldn't combine it with null ciphers. So the thing about null ciphers, though, is that they're really incredibly easy to crack. The purpose of a null cipher is to make a message look like something that doesn't even have a code in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To fool someone into thinking that there's not even any reason to look for a secret message in it because it just looks innocuous. It just looks like, I don't know, a groceries list.
Right.
Or instructions to feed my cat.
Right.
Right.
Like a love letter or something.
Right. So if you combined like null cipher in with like other encryption methods, like for instance booster photonic, if we set aside for the moment that the static indicates it's an audio file, I keep saying file like it's a computer thing, but an audio transmission.
Yeah.
If you put these other encryption things in there, then the null cipher is completely useless in the first place. Because once they decrypt, it doesn't make the entire message any harder to decrypt. Once they've decrypted it, they're easily going to crack through the null cipher. And the whole purpose of the null cipher thing was to be something that they wouldn't think there was any point in them trying to decode in the first place. So, Mr. Aykroyd, I applaud you for actually like using some terms that have something to do with cryptography, but they're misused in this instance.
Yeah.
-5 points.
-5 points.
I did think it's cool that he decoded it with the cereal box toy, which is an allusion to the Captain Crunch whistle that we discussed in the Sneakers episode.
Yeah, that was some really good stuff from Aykroyd. It kind of was a letdown because, it set the character for him to be this like awesome decoder type, which never was really used later, except for like a couple times. I don't know. But one thing I did want to talk about was, because this decoding part was the pre-training moment. Before they actually get pulled up, they had to go take a test. And I wanted to talk about my number 3 worst tradecraft was at the test taking. Chevy Chase showed up with like a quote unquote broken arm and an eye patch. And it was the most ridiculous cheating cover-ups ever. Like his hand and the broken arm was like super tiny, which he pulled out his real arm to scratch his face anyway. And like he had like a hit. It was bad cheating. And his whole like big escapade that he had, especially not noticing the proctor, like obviously noticed him like cheating and turned on those obvious cameras that anybody could see. That whole scene was silly to begin with, especially Aykroyd jumping in. So I didn't really care for that. Anyway, that's going to be my number 3 worst tradecraft was Chevy Chase cheating. It was bad.
Okay. It's definitely played for laughs. I think it's actually kind of low key, like one of the funniest scenes in the film, but that's not saying a lot.
Yeah.
Really not. So all that out of the way, they do start their mission by being dropped into Pakistan. And I want to point out my number 3 worst tradecraft here for the agency. They're dropped in an Ace Tomatoes box. And we might remember from the beginning of the film, Ace Tomatoes was the place where they, originally received the satellite transmission of the Russian ICBM. So that's obviously their cover company. I kept wondering whether or not I should quibble, when they get that important intelligence out, mm-hmm. and then they put it in an Ace Tomatoes van and head toward the Capitol or the State Department. It looks like I'm assuming these guys are supposed to be DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. They never identify themselves as such. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but the guys that set Aykroyd and Chase up as their patsies, the guys that are running the, what did you call them, the GLG20s?
GLG20s or whatever, yeah.
Right, yeah. They're definitely in Washington. They never said they were DIA, but when the Russians showed up in Pakistan, that was the, pretending to be their contacts. They introduced themselves as DIA. So that part kind of makes sense. We have this other agency that's, masquerading as the Ace Tomatoes Company. And, I wondered about the fact that, you load the message in the truck and then you've got to drive very, very, very slowly through this huge warehouse yard that's full of people, going back and forth in trucks and forklifts and workers and stuff. And, God forbid you ever actually have any intelligence that you need to deliver quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it could make it much harder to identify the Ace Tomatoes Company as the seat of your little secret, intelligence place.
Right.
And I think what might have been going on there too is I don't know if you ever caught, but the arm of the MI6 that James Bond works for,
uh-huh.
They always use Universal Exports as their cover. In all the movies. They never draw a huge amount of attention to it, but so that's probably why Ace Tomatoes is, I don't know, again, supposed to be funny or something.
Well, I mean, I think you have a really good point. If this is supposed to be your top secret headquarters, I wouldn't throw that into the middle of Pakistan. Because someone in Pakistani intelligence or any other intelligence agency on the planet will be like, who the hell is Ace Tomatoes? And now that place is going to be under surveillance.
That's why it gets my -5 points for sure. You could put any logo you want on that thing. The last logo in the world, is Ace Tomatoes, because if anybody's paying attention, they're gonna look that up.
Right. But I did want to say, I think it was a parody of the Pickle Factory, which kind of make me
right, yeah, okay,
yeah,
okay, I like that.
Yeah, but other than that, that's the stretch that I have for that.
Pickle Factory being a
the
very
CIA
hilarious reference to the nickname for the CIA that Dave and I uncovered lately.
Yeah.
Man, I wish we had known that when we started this podcast. I might have been willing to name this podcast the Pickle Factory.
Yeah.
No, nobody would have known what the fuck they were clicking on though.
Yeah.
So no to that.
Yeah.
Pakistan though. Does Pakistan make sense for this mission? Here, I actually find some really favorable things to say about the movie. The geography that they travel through, starting with Pakistan, they're over the course of the movie, they're going to travel from Pakistan to, and they make reference to the road to Dushanbe, which again is supposed to be a super secret. Who the fuck is going to get this? Reference to all the Bing Crosby and Bob Hope movies, which were all called The Road to Singapore, The Road to Tokyo, The Road to Marrakesh or whatever. Like that
Right.
was like the formula of it. But Dushanbe itself, where they're supposed to head to after they meet their contacts, is the capital of Tajikistan,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe would have been within Soviet borders at the time. And their drop point in Pakistan means they'd have to go through Afghanistan to get there, which they do. And so, I pulled up maps and like kind of, paid attention to all the names of the places that they go or say that they're going. And it all actually clocks. This does seem like legit where you would possibly drop some people just outside of the Soviet borders and sneak them up in there. And even the area of the Soviet Union that you would access
Uh-huh.
uh, by this route, I'm just going by Google Maps here. I don't actually know what the terrain looks like there, but just looking from Google Maps, it does look like high mountains and forest, the kind of which that we see like at the end of the movie when they get there. So props plus geography points.
Yeah. Yeah, at least they got that together. I don't know. Yeah. I actually thought it was kind of cool that they went through like the roads and we got a little bit of especially when we get to like the cold areas and they had to throw on the giant fur.
Which they had. I don't know how they had that stuff packed. That's fucking weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where we get to the drop, and these two very Ivy League looking appropriated white America fraternity bros show up after they're held up at gunpoint by some natives.
Mm-hmm.
I guess confirms the leak because we very quickly find out that these are Russians badly pretending to be very American contacts.
Yes, sir. And again, like I said, supposedly there's a leak in the training program, and this, seems to like support that theory. But the movie doesn't have any interest. It's not explicitly stated, and the movie has no interest in exploring that, any further, or talking about at no point does someone say, how did the Russians know that they were going to be there in the middle of fucking Pakistan?
Other than the giant Ace tomato box that they dropped.
Right. In any movie that was even slightly more interested in actually being even a bad spy movie, that's interesting stuff that
how did they find out?
Wonder.
How did they?
And right. And they should be maybe worried about what happened to their actual contacts, you would think. Minus spy points.
Yeah, but these two guys aren't the most privy, I guess, which is why they were selected. Minus spy points on Aykroyd because he's supposed to be the more aware one. But he is the one that picks up on your favorite moment of the film.
Oh, it's I don't know if I call it my favorite, but
I know. I was being sarcastic.
Oh, okay. Are we talking about the watch? We're talking about
the watch.
Let's talk about the watch. It's supposed to be this it's not even especially clever. It's so tossed out there or whatever, just scribbled onto the page. Who is writing this stuff and thinking, oh my God, this is genius. I gotta put another fucking pot of coffee on.
Yeah. Let's workshop this.
Right? But everything about these guys screams American in a way that also doesn't itself make sense because their contacts should be operating undercover out there. They shouldn't just be wandering around in their J. Crew catalog yuppie ass fucking sweaters and polo shirts in the middle of the goddamn desert.
Right.
And it's the fact that he's got a Russian-made watch that clues you into this. I call bullshit. The watch is probably the most natural thing about these guys. They're operating in Pakistan. The guy needed to buy a watch. You know what kind of watches they have in Pakistan? They have Russian Casios in Pakistan.
Yeah.
That's what kind of fucking watch you can buy there.
Yeah. In fact, the watch was the most, I guess, inconspicuous part of the garb. They were dressed like I had that feeling of what was it in Gilligan's Island, the millionaire and his wife.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah,
That's
the type of vernacular they had. Like, hi, it's good to see you guys.
Oh, right.
They got like sweater, like with the sleeves wrapped around their neck. They're in the middle of Pakistan, and they're dressed like they just like took a day out on the golf course or something. Like, like we're gonna go spend some time at the club with the Stevensons. That's how they're talking and how they're dressed. So like the watch is probably the only thing they have that makes them like blend in, on top of like this like openly colorful like costuming that makes them look like, I don't know, they just did some trades on Wall Street and are just gonna go relax at the country club.
I'll go ahead and say, in a even slightly smarter movie, it might have been like an American watch that like clued Aykroyd in, like something that like clued him in, that like to say these guys are trying too hard to look American
in the middle of Pakistan,
when they should be, our real contacts should be trying very hard to look like anything but.
Right.
I do like the part where he makes him laugh at a joke in Russian, though.
Yeah, that was. You know what they say.
I'll give a half a spy point on that, and that's only because I'm grading on a curve.
Yeah. That's very generous of you.
Half a spy point.
Yeah. But I think you're right. They should really be worried about what happened to the actual contacts, which never actually happened. They just kind of move on into like, the getaway and run into the what is this? The Yusuf.
I'll say Yusufzai.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And that's after they ditch the Russians, and this is again like some really good geography points for the movie, because these are he says these are the Yusufzai, and they're Afghans that are Pashtuns that are found in Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan, precisely where this movie, like this part of the movie, is supposed to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And I that was just cool to me. I was honestly like surprised. Like so much of the stuff I looked up in this movie, I was like, okay, that's garbage. Okay, that's garbage. Okay, that's garbage. And it's weird that like they got all this stuff about like these very specific like variations of like tribes and areas of this part of the world that like American audiences don't fucking know anything about. Right.
Well, like, for the time, it would have been really helpful, because isn't this during the Russian occupation in the Olympics, where we boycotted the Olympics when around this time?
85,
it was in the 80s.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so this could have been a propaganda film, a little bit, trying to get us more culturally aware of the Pakistan and Afghanistan groups that were pro-America at the time. Because I think this is when they run into them. Dan Aykroyd is like, oh, these guys are our allies.
Right, and then immediately get rounded up.
Yeah.
Which that part, but then that part like that falls apart, because actually these people were pro-American. These are not the kind of like Taliban guys that you run into in present day Afghanistan. These were like, pro. Well, I don't know if they were pro-democracy necessarily.
They were anti-occupation. Let's say they were anti-occupation.
Right.
And
enemies
so they saw us
enemies of our enemies at the very least.
Right. and they saw us as the
Dan
big
Aykroyd
arm.
gets it right by saying they're our allies, but then we immediately cut to, just because we have to do some stupid F troop bullshit, where like immediately the next scene they're like hanging them over a fire or whatever, like cannibals.
Yeah.
I want to before we get out of here too, though, the other, I mean, this has nothing to do with it being a spy movie, but just, really cool thing I thought that I found, like, okay, so we're talking about the Yousafzai, right?
Yeah.
Malala Yousafzai. Do you remember that girl that was shot in the head by the Taliban in 2012 and then survived and became like a big, like, international media sensation and went on to become like this huge voice for girls' education in Afghanistan, Pakistan?
Yes.
She's from this tribe. She's
really?
She is the single, like, famous person, at least to us, Western California dudes, that we would have. In fact, you can see her billboards all over LA. They're the ones, with that girl and she's got like a purple, I don't even know what you call it, but wrapping thing around her head. And the ones that say, like, girls should learn history and make it.
Right.
That's her. She's from this tribe.
Oh, shit. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And then they get bailed out from that situation by the two real agents, which we don't know that they're the real agents yet, but it's, what's her name? Dan Aykroyd's wife?
Donna Dixon.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Am I supposed to know her from anything else?
Not that I know.
I'll take that as a no.
Okay. Yeah, they don't. Well, the audience, and they don't know that they're talking to the real agents. But there's like a medical camp set up among the tribe, and there's a posse of doctors, and the two spies, the real ones, identify Aykroyd and Chase as these amazing doctors, internationally world-renowned, that have come to save people, and that they're going to perform this brilliant surgery to save this guy's life.
Right, and whose idea is that? It's the real spies, right?
It is, which I think is actually kind of cool that they did that, and I think it's because they didn't know how to do the surgery that we find out later, thanks to Aykroyd, but I also kind of wondered at this point if maybe it was their way of testing out who they were.
Right. I want to think that her flirting with Chevy Chase is that she's detected that he's an obvious imposter, or at least she suspects him as such. Yeah. And maybe she's actually setting him up to fail in the surgery, which just accomplishes two things for her. It establishes that he's not who he says he is, except that it was us, the real spies, that made this thing up of who he said he is. So maybe that doesn't hold up too much. But also just the fact that she and her partner couldn't have done the surgery. So I'll give that plus spy points. I'll call it my number one best.
It's a good one. It's a really, really good one, because it shows that the real spies are. This is always going to come back, and I think every one of our podcasts, or not everyone, but a lot of them, the thing you said the first podcast we had about The Man Who Knew Too Much is that this is a story interrupted a great spy story, and we kind of want to know that spy story. Right.
Yeah. Except the difference is. This one wasn't even that good of a spy story that we're interrupting. That's where I think it deviates even from, like, The Man Who Knew Too Little.
I don't know. I want to know about her 2.5 years of training to get to the big moment. I kind of want to, and her losing, or I guess I don't want to spoiler. She loses her partner. I want to. I kind of want to learn a little bit about that, or at least a little bit more than this whole story.
And I'll I'll jump ahead since you mentioned that she said she trained for this mission for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
This mission was we know that this mission was a replacement mission for the other guys, their best agents that they just lost. So I don't know. Were they training for 2.5 years as the backup team? I think she's lying when she says she trained for this mission for 2.5 years.
Oh, I think it was more of a professional climb. I mean, I'm not defending the writing in this film at all, and not to shit on Aykroyd any more than we already have and are going to continue, because he probably
his writing, to be specific, right?
Yeah, that's like, it's not him. I'm just saying the writing in this film, because he probably had to patch up a lot of things, as kind of we discussed in last episode. But I think she meant like her like professional climb up the ladder, that she's worked really hard to get to this point, that this is where she wants to be. Like, not so much specifically for this mission, but what I got from that was that she spent her whole life wanting to become this type of an agent, spent the last 2.5 years training to be chosen for a mission like this. She's not going to let this get messed up. She's going to stay on mission, and that's the way it is, type of thing. I didn't think that it was, we were specifically told we're being trained for this mission for 2.5 years.
That does make more sense. It does take a little bit of the air out of my balloon on calling it my number 2 best. Right. But, and we're skipping ahead later to later in the film. But, at the point where she does use that, like, I trained for 2.5 years for this mission, and, my partner was one of the most dedicated GLG 20s in history, which also I think, could very well be cooked up on her part. Right. But it's an appeal to honor, and whether or not either of those are lies, it's what she pulls out of her rhetorical arsenal to get them on board to help her complete the mission, which she needs to do because she's lost her partner, and I don't know, apparently, like, this mission probably was not designed to be accomplished by just one guy, unless of course that guy is Derek Flint.
He
does not need a team.
No, not whatsoever.
He works alone. We know this about him. I mean, well, so she's got some decent moves. She's
got a lot of moves. She's got the best moves of the movie, pretty much.
She's the most spy-like character here, from the top of the organization to everywhere. She's a little bit better than the Russians. She's
Other than Terry Gilliam posing as a German, an American in British films posing as a German in a SNL film.
Right. Yeah, Terry Gilliam. You say he's posing as a German? I guess. I didn't catch that.
Oh, his accent sounded pretty German, but maybe, I don't know.
That's weird. Scratching my head. I mean, I'm done scratching my head. I've written all my notes, but it doesn't make sense to have him in this movie. This is literally his first film role that didn't have to do with Monty Python or his own films.
Right.
And on looking it up, I was surprised. Like, he actually shows up in almost all of his own films, just kind of like Hitchcock does.
Yeah.
Like in the background or something. And he's got some minor roles in his Monty Python stuff. And but he doesn't, never minding him showing up in his own work, like, he doesn't do another acting role until 21 years after this, in 2006. Uh-huh. So it's really you got to call that a cameo then, right?
Yeah,
Unless,
absolutely. But it was probably like a SNL type of we're buddies type of thing, like, come help us out or come show up. I mean, there was a lot of cameos in this film.
Sure. Well, yeah. And a surprising number of them are directors. Like, Terry Gilliam, for instance. And then we also just out of the blue, and again, for no reasons that make any sense to me, the two guards, the first two guards that we meet when the DIA spooks go to, I forget if it's Arizona or Nevada, but wherever the secret underground base is. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The where they had to order the Pepsis.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The product
Exactly.
placement scene.
Those first two guys is Sam Raimi and Joel Cohen.
What?
Again, total cameos out of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why. Like maybe I don't know. They're just director buddies.
Yeah.
This guy who's like, hey, do you want to be in this film? Maybe they were like huge fans of the Blues Brothers or something.
Yes. Yeah. Probably.
I don't know.
Well, this does have as many cameos as the Blues Brothers did, it looks like, because there was a lot of them.
Right. And again, like, it's a bunch of directors, and then, of course, the Bob Hope one, which does make sense, but only if you do the research. Because you actually, I mean, like, for instance, like Family Guy did a whole series of parodies on the road movies. And I think that those, at least, probably like some audiences would have identified them as being homages to the Bob Hope, Bing Crosby thing. But this one, and I say this without having seen those movies, but I still feel fairly confident that nobody is understanding why the fuck Bob Hope shows up in this movie for 5 seconds, unless they do a wiki search,
which they didn't have at the time.
Right, and there was no internet at the time, so what's the point?
Yeah. I mean, well,
it's true. It's true. I am often guilty of inserting jokes into my own work that only I will get.
Right.
without caring about whether or not the rest of the world gets them. So I can't, I can't call the kettle too black in this case.
Yeah.
But it's an annoying habit, and I should probably stop it. I'm not gonna stop it, but
yeah. But we do get the funniest moment of the entire film that was actually pretty funny.
By far.
Yeah. They first meet the tent of doctors and have a whole discussion about them pulling off this surgery that no one in the world can pull off other than the two of them. And they're I guess greeting, and then their leaving greeting is just everyone in the tent addressing each other as doctor.
Every single one.
Every single one.
I got the script page. I got the script pages, by the way.
Are you serious?
We're gonna put them on Facebook. It's 3 pages of doctor. It's fucking 3 pages of that shit. It goes through the entire list of all the characters in that tent.
That made it almost worth it to finish all of this. But and then when they leave, they go through the entire thing all over again, and they call each other just doctor. And as soon as everybody leaves, Dan Aykroyd looks Chevy Chase in the face, just deadpan. He's like, "We're not doctors.
We're not doctors." Yeah.
But I'm gonna put this as my number 3 best tradecraft. Is them just going with the flow. I mean, I'm really pulling here, but apparently this was good enough to fool the giant group of doctors, other than Terry Gilliam. But it was pretty good.
Because this is kind of like it happens in this ish part of the movie, but this is where the DIA spooks go to WAMP, which for no reasons that are explained to us, like why they get called there to this like underground bunker. And again, just quick check for thoroughness. WAMP doesn't mean anything. It's not a real thing. I mean, I guess we all believe that the Army has, super secret underground bunkers like this.
Oh, we know they do. Yeah,
right.
They're all over the country. There's like a bunch of them, but not like to what they showed in the movie, but there's tons of underground facilities.
Sure.
But not like not like this like a our man Flint type of and that elevator was silly. People would be flying off the elevator, dropping down that fast.
Right. Yeah. Another case too of like this movie just kind of spending quite a bit more money than seems necessary.
Yeah. Well, they had they probably had the budget that Blues Brothers did. I think at one point the Blues Brothers had the most expensive car crash in film history for like, I don't know, 20 years or something.
Probably. Like movie budgets in general, they're really hard to track down and pin down because studios are very secretive about that shit.
Yeah, and they've had caps. It was actually Paint Your Wagon that created budget caps. So anything after Paint Your Wagon has a solid budget cap. It's kind of like the music in the 70s where they would just let bands like live at the studio and burn all this cash because they had to have their artistic dream come alive, and then at some point they were like, you guys need to put something out. Like
right, okay.
But yeah, Paint Your Wagon still has not broken even because of how much money was spent on that film, which is why you probably
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's probably why it was syndicated on Comedy Central so much and on television so much, because it was just silly how much money was spent on it. I mean, you probably had to pay Clint Eastwood a pretty penny to sing like that.
You want to hear some sad statistics?
Yes.
All right. This movie made $60 million. Has to date made $60 million. And if you look at because movie, like I said, budgets are really secretive and hard to find, but it's relatively easy to figure out how much a movie is actually pulled in.
Right.
There's only four, I think I want to say 4 movies in 1985 that made more than this. And some of them are like ultra super performers, like Rambo 2, I think tops the list at like 250 million that it's made so far. Clue, here's the depressing part. Clue came out this year. Vastly superior movie. Vastly superior movie.
Not even a question.
Spies Like Us has made 60 million. Clue has only made 13.
Oh my God, that's depressing.
It's very depressing.
Well, I know Clue did terrible at the box office because it was the first they had the 3 different endings, and whichever theater you went to had a different ending or something. And I know it didn't do well. It ended up doing better in syndication because it became a cult classic like, I don't know, decades later.
It's also a movie that doesn't translate almost at all across like internationally.
Oh, well, that's true. And it was based on a play.
Everyone can get down with Rambo 2.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well, that's probably why the Marvel films do so well, and all the like franchise films do so well, because they're very broad audience, very propaganda friendly, I guess.
Yeah, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole necessarily. Well, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
But more and more, like a scary thing that's happening is that like more movies are being tailored to the Chinese audience. Because that's such a huge thing. And I think that I forget, this is a couple of years ago, there was some movie where they even rewrote the dialogue so that the words that the American actors were speaking would be easier to dub the Chinese version into.
Oh, wow.
like it goes to that level of detail. And plus, never minding the fact that just like I think it's going to be a long time before we see any major Hollywood movie say anything bad about China.
Oh, never. It's never going to happen whatsoever. And like you can see things starting to get more watered down to a more abstract or I guess broader state, so that you can hit any audience, which Clue does not accomplish. Clue was based on a play that was heavy in dialogue. plays are heavy. Plays are just dialogue to begin with, and then you make a movie about it, and all of the actors are American except for Tim Curry. It's that's not a movie that's going to translate well anywhere else, except for maybe England and America. And on top of that, Clue was very, very, very satirical, which would have been anti-propaganda for whoever. It's definitely against the machine. And especially with the lines "communism was a red herring" that you hear like 3 times, that's not going to work well in China.
How did we get off on this tangent?
Uh,
Got some minus spy points.
yeah.
Although it's funny that our hapless dudes make a collect call and explain their whole situation to an AT&T operator.
Oh, yeah. That's right. They go undercover. The first time we actually see them blend in with the crowd, which is, I guess, kind of cool that they're starting to get better as they're moving along, I guess. But I am going to say that this point is my number 2 worst tradecraft because at the toll booth or whatever, Chevy Chase spots the doctor. And he starts chasing her again. Oh, I guess we didn't talk about his flirtatious moments with her at the previous tent moment. But
yeah, I think we did. And my take on it was that I want to believe that she was pretending to succumb to his advances literally to draw him out. We don't get any support for that hypothesis, but I want to be kind to her, and I'm looking for good tradecraft in this movie, and that is, you got 2 things you could believe here: is either she's a dumb blonde that really thinks that the Chevy Chase whole "I'm Chevy Chase and you're not" shtick is a panty dropper.
Yeah.
or you can believe that she's an intelligent operative that is seeing someone that probably isn't who he says and she can use his horniness against him in getting some information out. And if I have to choose between those 2, I'm just going to choose the one that I like more, which is the latter.
Yeah, and well, I think we get a little bit of support because when he actually approaches her at the toll stop or whatever, she's like, "Don't touch me." So we know she wasn't actually interested in him. So that really shows her ability to seduce someone, and his inability to like pay attention to anything. The guy with the utmost diplomatic skills, which don't ever really work for him except for like twice, and it's by accident.
Right. And at this point, like, I will give Aykroyd's character like some plus spy points for, okay, they got no support, they got no idea what to do, like the idea of let's like going native, of dressing up like locals. I mean, that's something that in any movie that was even attempting to be a better spy movie would have been their first move.
Mm-hmm.
But at least he finally, kind of shows some glimmer of like thinking about their situation at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. They're I guess getting better as they're going down the road.
A bit better.
Yeah.
They get split up at the border.
Mm-hmm.
Aykroyd makes his escape, and Chevy Chase gets captured. I did notice about this, like that our Russians from Pakistan show up pretty quickly after these. I got to assume that this, the 2 Russian cops or army guys,
Border Patrol.
I think is what Patrol. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a pretty low pay, low prestige kind of job. This is probably not the most important border,
Yeah.
And Soviet Union's got a lot of fucking border to protect.
Yeah. Well, it's like protecting Asia and risk, right?
But I noticed that the fact our Russian guys showed up real quick And I wonder, does that make sense? I think it does. I think it does, because I think that they would have put out an APB or whatever the 1985 Russian Border Patrol equivalent is, to notify the KGB if guys matching Aykroyd and Chase's descriptions were seen.
Yeah.
So that's a little plus spy points. Yeah.
Yeah. Major plus spy points.
Okay.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. I'm gonna put this my number 2 best tradecraft, and I think it's your number 3 during the interrogation.
Oh yeah.
They're trying to figure out why Chevy Chase is there, and he's being a smartass, and none of it's working. Finally, he's like, "All right, you know what? I came to assassinate the Russian premier," and they're like, "Aha! I knew it." So instead of stonewalling, he basically makes up a lie, and it works.
It's actually his only plus spy points in the movie, I think,
Yeah.
for Chevy Chase character. This is actually the right play. Your other 2 plays would be stonewalling and just saying like, "Oh, I ain't gonna say nothing.
Yeah.
I want to talk to my embassy guy."
Yeah.
Or telling the truth, which I don't even know what he could say that would be telling the truth. Like, I don't know, I was dropped in a tomato crate and told to fucking, like, wait for further orders.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my number 3 best, your number 2 best. It's much better to tell a good lie that would be, tasty, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if not necessarily believable, because the Russian premiere is probably in Moscow, and I don't have a map in front of me, but I think that's pretty fucking far from the
This is kind of the long
Tajikistan
game.
border.
Just playing the long game, yeah.
But yeah, tell him something that they want to hear is what he does, and that is always the right play, right?
Yeah, always.
Especially when it's something that you think that they want to hear, that they think that you don't really want them to know. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good. What do you think about, Karen, that's the Donna Dixon character. She tells Aykroyd immediately, like, when he catches up with her, she's like, "Oh, you're the decoys."
Yeah.
I don't think that's good spy points. I think the smarter agent could have recruited him. Oh, like, assuming that she's like, okay, because she's lost her partner at this point.
Yeah.
And maybe she does recognize that she's lacking in manpower to complete the mission that she's got, which also, like, really quick, I gotta backtrack and say she actually doesn't fucking know what her mission is. That's also stupid.
Yeah.
But
I think this is more of like a kind of a breath of relief or something for her, because she spotted them in the desert on the camel and didn't like the advances from Chevy Chase, and so she thought she probably is going through a number of scenarios, and then her coming to the conclusion, "Oh, you're the decoys." Like, she has nothing to worry about.
I get it. She comes to the conclusion, but is it smart to just say that? Like, "Oh, you're the dummies."
Oh, not at all. But one, it's probably a plot point move, and number 2, putting myself in her shoes, she's probably like, "Oh, you're just the decoys. Oh, okay, good." Like that, it probably just came out because she probably had, being the good spy that she is, are these guys spies? Are these just guys weirdos? Who the hell are these guys that are obviously in and out, crossing paths with us? And then she like realizes, "Oh, you're the decoy." So it just kind of came out as kind of like a stress relief type of thing. But yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely probably not the best thing to say. But at that point, she probably realizes that she has nothing to worry about. I think is what's going on in her head.
Doesn't let her off the hook, in my opinion. It's still. I mean, yeah, you can say it's, you can make excuses for it, but it's just, She could have gotten their help without sharing that piece of information.
I mean, she did lose her partner just recently, which she
Yeah,
lets him know. So another piece of information she might not have shared, but yeah, no, yeah. Especially since she trained 2.5 years for this mission, you know. But she's the one that lets them know, or lets Aykroyd know about the missile. One of the things I did want to talk about, and I don't know if this should be here or not, but they find out the location of the ICBM mainly because the Russian or whoever's put in charge of guarding the ICBMs are playing loud 80s disco, or is it disco or new wave? I don't know.
I'll call it disco.
Okay, yeah.
Could
And
be
they're
wrong.
just dancing up a storm and having a party.
That's your number one worst, right?
Yes. Yeah.
My
Yeah,
number one worst is also goes to the same guys. Okay, so again, this movie has no respect for actual timelines. Just because we the audience just first saw the ICBM, at this point in the movie, like an hour ago.
right.
This is supposed to be like months later. They had to go through all the training and everything, and also get dropped in Pakistan. So, let's say shortened. Even if you compressed all that training, that's got to be at least like 2 months, right?
Right.
Which even that is kind of stupidly short
Yeah.
for what they're doing. But
Yeah.
let's just give the movie at least that much credit that they managed that 2 months of training, and then it's probably like a month at least for them to get from their drop in Pakistan up to this location. Now you got 3 months that have passed, and the Russians have not set up their comms. Minus 5 points. Todd's worst number one tradecraft. It just you not only are they playing loud ass music in the middle of nowhere, they've apparently just been doing it for 3 months and saying I don't know, are we ever gonna check in? I don't know, check in.
Yeah.
We got a
hey,
nuclear missile here.
Yeah, we're doing all right. Unless they're trying to go dark, but even then, there's probably
in a funnier movie, it could have been like something like the novel The Last Detail or something, where they actually don't like their jobs, and they're like, hey, you know what, guys? They sent us out here into Siberia and told us to fucking set up the comm link. Why don't we just fucking hang out here and drink and dance to disco music and just wait for them to come and fucking find us?
Yeah.
Fuck those guys.
Right.
What are they gonna do?
Yeah. But how they approach the situation, they dress up like aliens in the middle of the night and try and spook the guards of the ICBMs.
Was this supposed to be funny?
Yeah.
I don't get it, but it's another key into the Dan Aykroyd mind, as we discussed, he's huge into UFOs and ghosts, as a real person in real life.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, some there's some mention about a cow that was stolen.
Yeah.
There's a local legend where a UFO stole a cow from some Russian farmers in this area. And, maybe that has something to do with some weird shit that Dan Aykroyd fucking read and thought would be interesting to us, but it's just fucking strange.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's really weird. From there, they overtake them with their tranquilizers. The missile's launched. They discover that the missile was supposed to be launched to to show off their big that the U.S. has this big missile defense system.
Right,
Missile defense system doesn't work.
which we should underline too, because this is 1985. You got Ronald Reagan in the White House, and his Star Wars pet program is largely like the kind of overarching point of this movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure we got that in there. And
No.
Like the idea is like to launch a missile to basically it's kind of a neat idea. Like you're sitting, like let's say you're sitting there with this Star Wars system.
Yeah.
And you're confident it works, but if the Russians don't know that it works, then what use is it? And I think even is it in this movie? Someone says, one of the generals says, an unused weapon is a useless weapon.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a defensive weapon. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like that greater concept overall. Is like what we need to do is figure out how to make the Russians fire an ICBM at us so that we can show them your ICBMs have no power over us.
Right, and it's a good political move. I guess politically, so they could say, "Oh, they attacked us, but good thing we defended. Now we have political and diplomatic sway, or whatever." But that's a big risk for the American people, I don't
Would have
know.
been smart. Would have been smarter to send in someone with the information on how to defuse the warhead, or see, because Scram, like the guys back in the underground base. They know the launch codes. They know the codes to make the missile launch. There's got to be an additional code that actually arms the warhead.
Right.
So just don't put that code in. Now you've got a dummy missile that's fired at the United States, but the Russians don't know that it's a dummy missile.
Yeah.
And so when your Star Wars thing shoots it down, you get all the benefits. And if for some reason that tiny little bit of failure chance that you had, you don't, lose the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah. Right.
And that's another reason I think it's just stupid of this movie that Karen, Donna Dixon, is not actually briefed on what the goal of her mission was. Like in advance.
Yeah, but that's compartmentalization is a big thing, because now she has to wrestle with the decision to make that, and even if she says she's okay with it, she might have to make that decision when she actually does it.
I get that. But I mean, this movie's like, we've given it more time than it deserves.
Yeah.
But and the whole end of the movie, feels very like it's trying to be a little Doctor Strangelove-y.
Yeah.
But at no point am I worried. Like, I don't feel like I care about the state. At no point did I
and you're of that generation where like nuclear war.
I'm not watching a nuclear missile headed toward, and of course, I would have been 14 when this movie came out. So maybe I would have felt different as a 14-year-old kid sitting in the theaters in 1985. But definitely when I watch it as a guy that's approaching 50 from the distance of 45 years, there's nothing about that nuclear missile launch that makes me even the slightest bit worried. I'm just sitting there saying well, everything else in this movie so far has just been resolved by, I don't know, just whatever seemed very convenient to the scriptwriter at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm sure this is gonna go nowhere as well, just like everything else has.
Yeah. But like I've seen a lot of movies now that deal with nuclear war possibilities, and we watch a lot of spy movies, so Cold War type stuff is a big deal. And I'm not from that generation, and I still get kind of on the edge of my seat with that stuff. And you're from that generation, so it should have gotten to you, but it's not
Well,
played
not
out
really,
in this
not really,
movie.
not really. It's like my parents and my uncles and aunts that really did like the whole like get under your desks kind of thing.
That's not what I meant, though. I'm talking just Cold War because Cold War was, it's a possibility and it's still there. So it was still looming versus when I was growing up, it wasn't even like looming. It was kind of like something in the distant past or kind of a recent past. Uh, you know, but, Cold War was still heavy when you were growing up.
It really does. I mean, it really does seem weird though, that I mean, we've been told over and over, like, we've got enough nukes to, like, kill everyone on the planet 1,000 times over. And there still hasn't been a single nuclear bomb detonated since, well, Hiroshima was the first, and then there was the second.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long fucking time ago. I mean, it's just weird, like, how we've just all become acclimated and just comfortable with the fact that, like, yep, nukes exist.
Yeah. Right.
All right, man. Let's quickly review our best and worst. All right, my number 3, Ace Tomatoes box. Don't put your logo on your drop thing. I mean, even if it's a secret logo, like it's unnecessary. Number 3 worst. Number 2 worst. There's this concern about there being a leak in the training program, but what would that actually mean? Why would that be a problem? And why would you respond to it this way by putting some dummies through that same training program? It just doesn't go anywhere. And my number 1 is like the Russians just like months and months and months and not setting up and checking in with HQ.
My number 3, Chevy Chase's cheating on the test was silly. My number 2 was when Chevy Chase went after the doctor at the toll when she obviously was not a doctor. My number 1, the missile guards playing loud ass music in the middle of nowhere and sound carries.
My number 3 best, Chevy Chase actually gets a little bit of points here. I think that lie where he says he's here to assassinate the Russian premier, that was the right move. Yeah. My number 2 and 1 both go to Karen. Number 2 is the way that she appeals to our guys to get them to help her. And then, for sure, my number 1 best also goes to her. And, she is posing as a doctor. We don't know that at the time. But she and her partner can't do the surgery. What about these guys? Let's put the attention on them. Everything that she does with, being like seeming okay with getting seduced by Chevy Chase, and then also kind of throwing the two of them under the bus into a situation that she thinks that they can't actually handle, while giving herself and her partner cover from a situation that they definitely can't handle. That's number 1. That's actually decent spy moves.
Yeah. My number 3 was Chase and Aykroyd pretending to be doctors, mainly because it was the funniest moment in the movie, but they were quick on their feet, I guess. My number 2 is Chase pretending to assassinate the Russian premier, as Todd pointed out. And my number 1 is the quote-unquote spy master setting up decoys for another mission. We were really drawing here, so I'm not really hitting these as hard as I could. Moving on to redactions.
So yeah, redactions. I think the instinct is to start at a 5 and see if we, which would be the most unrealistic spy movie possible. And then maybe see if we have reasons to work our way down from that. I see we gave Our Man Flint a 5. Is this Our Man Flint level bullshit? Or is it?
I mean, it's realistic that the situation could happen. As far as like the general setup, but it wasn't executed well.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, but this movie, you're saying this movie, though, Spies Like Us, more or less realistic than Man Who Knew Too Little. And remember, like, you know, it's not just the premise, but also the other tradecraft that we see along the way. Like, you have a bad premise, but still, like, have some, you know, decent spy stuff going on. And then, like, you know, if it's supposed to be a little more realistic than The Man Who Knew Too Little, then that would get us into La Femme Nikita territory at a 4. And I'm feeling that 4 or 4.5.
4.25.
No, we're not gonna split hairs that much.
Yeah.
You gotta pick. Is this less realistic than La Femme Nikita? Or is it more realistic than The Man Who Knew Too Little? I know, tough choice.
I feel we might have snubbed La Femme Nikita at this point. I don't know. I think it's less realistic than La Femme Nikita. So let's maybe go with the 4.5.
There we go.
Yeah.
4.5, and that's the show. Good Shepherd. Next episode.
Yep.
So much more to talk about on that one.
Yes, I'm really excited for that one because we've mentioned it several times, and I'm really, really excited. And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like_us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net. You know, find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what will really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.